Hey everyone, it's AJ Stockwell. I'm a licensed CPA and the title of this video is true, technically. No, it is not clickbait and it is not a clever cash flow management technique. I would never recommend that. But this is the story of how a few weeks ago I actually bounced not one, but two checks. Now, before you unsubscribe from my videos and stop following me altogether because you think that I shouldn't be a CPA if I've bounced a check, allow me to explain. A couple weeks ago, I wrote a check from one of my business bank accounts to the other. And a few days later when I checked, I found that it had bounced from the account that I deposited it from. However, it showed up as cleared from the bank that I wrote it out of. So somewhere in between the two banks, my money was missing. So immediately, I called the bank that I wrote the check out of, and they informed me that on this particular day that these two checks were processed by them, they had some kind of technical glitch that resulted in all of the checks that they processed that day being returned or being bounced. I really like working with smaller banks and community banks because as a small business owner, I find that you can get a greater level of attention and service from them. And this is a smaller bank. Now, with that said, I've still never heard of a bank doing this and bouncing all of the checks that get processed in a certain day, but I understand that mistakes happen. And I think that the most important thing when mistakes happen is that they are communicated effectively and remedied. And I talk about this a little bit in my video about the two skills that you have to have as a bookkeeper or an accountant. So when I talked to the bank's customer service, they were extremely apologetic and they told me that there would be a letter that is sent out on bank letterhead, which I have that letter printed out right here, and it's signed by the bank CEO, and basically it explains that there was some technical glitch and that their customers were not responsible for this. The customer likely had sufficient funds to cover the check, and the bank is taking full responsibility. And I really appreciated this because that meant that I could present this letter if I had written the check to someone else, which was the case for that second check that I mentioned. I could send them this letter and it would explain what happened. And if they needed to contact the bank, they could do that. The customer service person also told me that the funds would reappear in my account a few days later, which they did, and then I could either resubmit the original check or write a new check for the amount. So I have to give kudos to the bank for the way that they handled this because they were very apologetic. They took full responsibility of the situation very quickly. I actually had someone reach out to me a couple of more times to follow up and make sure that everything was okay. And I really appreciated that. Now, this situation reminds me of two of the most important bookkeeping concepts and processes that I've talked about several times. And those are the difference between your book balance and your bank balance of your bank account and the importance of reconciling your bank account on a regular basis. So let's talk about each of those individually. So when I talk about the book balance versus the bank balance, what I mean is the book balance is the balance that you see for your bank account within your bookkeeping system, whether that's within QuickBooks or another software. And the bank balance is what you see either when you're looking at a bank statement or when you're logged into your online banking. And there are a lot of times when these balances can be different. The most common reason that these balances would be different is because you've sent out a check or a payment, so that's recorded in your bookkeeping system, but maybe the check hasn't been cashed yet, so it hasn't cleared your actual bank account. So let's say all things being equal, you had $5,000 in your bank account per the bank balance when you look in your online banking, and you have $5,000 in the book balance when you look at your QuickBooks system. But then you write a check for $2,000 and it hasn't been cashed yet because you've just sent it out. Now in QuickBooks, your book balance, you'll see that you only have $3,000 available. But when you look in your online banking, you still see $5,000. So it's really important to keep your book balance up to date because if you just looked at your online banking, you might think that you'd be able to write a check for $4,000. But actually, if you were to write a check for $4,000 and the $4,000 check cleared and the $2,000 check cleared, one of them would probably bounce, or at best you would overdraft your account. So it's really important to keep your book balance up to date and to be referring to your book balance when you're making decisions about cash flows. The second bookkeeping concept that I mentioned is reconciling your bank account. And this is how you make sure that everything that has been recorded to your bookkeeping system is in your online banking and vice versa. And any differences, you either investigate or you understand why they're different. It's the process of going through your bank statement and your QuickBooks account activity side by side and making sure that everything matches up. You want to make sure that the amounts are correct. You want to make sure that you didn't duplicate anything and post maybe a same deposit or check twice. And you want to make sure that you're not missing anything in your QuickBooks that has hit your online banking. This is a really important activity that all small businesses should be doing at least monthly, and some businesses do even more frequently, just comparing to the online banking activity if they don't get statements more than once a month. Understanding the difference between the book balance and the bank balance of your bank account and regularly reconciling your checking account are two very important ways to make sure that you never bounce a check. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit that like button below the video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any of these other bookkeeping tips or these stories about how I, as a CPA, bounced a check.